Musician David Anthony Burke, known professionally as d4vd, is currently awaiting a preliminary hearing on murder and mutilation charges following the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The details of the crime scene have dominated headlines, but the actual criminal prosecution relies heavily on a parallel investigation happening on the periphery, analyzing exactly what the Burke family knew about the relationship and precisely when they knew it. To understand the scope of this peripheral investigation, we must isolate three distinct streams of data: the documented geographic movements of the victim, the execution of rapid financial transfers in Texas, and the cross-state legal filings used to force the family into a Los Angeles courtroom. This timeline matrix provides the necessary analytical framework. We are mapping the data across three distinct tracks to see where the physical evidence overlaps with the family's actions. Utilizing a strict chronological overlay is the only way to separate confirmed procedural facts from online speculation. By plotting the circumstantial evidence against the corresponding legal filings, we can isolate the specific anomalies that prompted a judge to mandate the family's testimony before a secret grand jury. Cross-jurisdictional murder cases are rarely solved by a single piece of evidence. They require prosecutors to view circumstantial behavior through a rigid timeline of legal milestones. Based on intelligence gathered by the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, the absolute starting point for this timeline is January 2022. This is the month detectives determined the defendant and the victim first met. According to the prosecution's pre-hearing brief, the victim's geographic footprint expanded significantly throughout 2024. She spent considerable time traveling with the defendant, leaving a documented trail through Las Vegas, London, the Hollywood Hills, and Texas. That Texas node is critical. Investigators confirmed the victim physically traveled to Texas specifically to meet the defendant's family, establishing a direct physical intersection. The defendant's brother, Caleb Burke, presented a starkly different public narrative. Attempting to distance himself from the allegations, Caleb released a statement claiming he had not lived with his brother for years and that they maintained minimal contact, mostly limited to family tours or brief visits home. Addressing a video circulating online that showed him interacting with the victim backstage, Caleb asserted he was 15 at the time, did not know her well, and was entirely unaware of her age. We can plot these competing narratives. Track 1 shows the continuous travel pattern outlined by the prosecution, while the family's public defense relies on isolating their contact to a single localized event. For investigators building a case, overlapping physical proximity is the necessary baseline for proving a family had knowledge of an ongoing relationship. However, physical presence carries a strict legal caveat. Merely being in the same room does not automatically prove the family possessed legal awareness of the victim's exact age or the illicit nature of the dynamic. The geographic data solidifies the Hollywood Hills residence as the primary hub of their interaction during the summer weekends of 2024, immediately preceding her disappearance. While the family firmly denies having any deep structural knowledge of the relationship, the prosecution's baseline confirms geographic intersection. That established baseline becomes the leverage point during the investigative escalation in September. To see where the case against the family crystallized, we have to narrow the timeline to a highly concentrated 30-day window spanning late August to late September 2025. The procedural sequence begins in California. On August 26th, a black Tesla Model X was reported abandoned in Los Angeles. Over the next week, the Department of Transportation marked the vehicle, issued a citation, and ultimately impounded it on September 5th. The critical detail was the vehicle's registration. The Tesla was registered directly to the defendant at the Burke family's address in Hempstead, Texas. The situation escalated from a parking violation to a criminal investigation when the tow yard manager reported a severe odor of decay coming from the vehicle, prompting LAPD homicide detectives to respond. On September 8th, investigators obtained a search warrant and discovered the victim's dismembered remains concealed inside the vehicle's front trunk. 10 days later, a simultaneous anomaly occurred nearly 1,500 miles away. On September 18th, the Burke family's Texas residence was targeted by a swatting call. A caller with a distorted voice contacted Waller County 911, falsely claiming to have heard gunshots and a woman screaming, alleging someone was dead on the family's expansive 7-acre property. Plotting this on the matrix reveals the proximity. The LAPD discovery on September 8th sits just 10 days prior to the September 18th hoax at the Texas property linked to the vehicle's registration. Financial metadata generated during this exact window provides the next layer of circumstantial evidence: the rapid execution of property deed transfers. The defendant systematically transferred the deeds of 2 separate Texas homes out of his direct ownership and into a trust managed by his mother, Colleen Burke. The timeline correlation here is exact. The first of those 2 real estate transfers was executed on September 18th, the exact same day armed deputies responded to the swatting call at the family home. The second transfer followed on September 20th. For investigators, these transfers trigger a specific hypothesis: the rapid shielding of financial assets in anticipation of an imminent arrest or civil liability. Forensic accountants treat sudden, concentrated asset restructuring immediately following the discovery of a crime scene as a high-probability indicator of systemic awareness. These financial moves perfectly aligned with the defendant's sudden public withdrawal, canceling his concert tour and going entirely silent on social media. The discovery of the vehicle in California, followed immediately by the swatting incident and urgent financial restructuring in Texas, created a highly concentrated data spike. This timeline correlation provided the necessary leverage to target the family for formal questioning. Armed with the September timeline data, Los Angeles prosecutors moved to legally compel the defendant's parents and brother to testify before a secret grand jury in California. To cross state lines, prosecutors utilized a specific legal instrument called a petition of attendance, an order designed to force out-of-state witnesses into a requesting jurisdiction. The Burke family aggressively resisted. Their attorneys filed a writ of habeas corpus, initiating a direct legal countermaneuver to block the California subpoenas. The core argument was jurisdictional protection. They argued that Texas residents cannot be lawfully compelled to surrender their freedom of movement and travel to another state without being fully informed of the investigation's scope. This visual represents the evidentiary dispute. The Burke family was only provided with a heavily redacted version of the district attorney's affidavit. The defense maintained that blacking out the central paragraphs denied their clients the necessary context required by Texas law, rendering the subpoenas unlawful. This cross-state dispute was adjudicated in a Texas courtroom, forcing a local judge to weigh the family's right to due process against California's ongoing homicide investigation. The prosecution's counterargument relied on the paper trail. The vehicle containing the victim's remains was directly registered to the exact Houston area property where the witnesses resided. After privately reviewing the fully unredacted evidence, the Waller County judge made his ruling. He determined the witnesses were material and necessary, denied the writ, and ordered the family to honor the California subpoena. The definitive link of the vehicle's registration established a material threshold that completely overrode the family's jurisdictional defense. Zooming out to view the completed matrix, the architecture of the investigation becomes clear. Geographic proximity was definitively established by the victim's travel records, and the rapid execution of property transfers perfectly trailed the LAPD's discovery of the vehicle. Yet, despite this comprehensive data model, one critical variable remains entirely absent from the public record. The actual content of the family's eventual testimony in Los Angeles is still locked behind a redaction block. Grand jury proceedings are strictly sealed by law. That seal will only break at the upcoming preliminary hearing, when prosecutors are legally required to present their evidence in open court to prove probable cause against the defendant. The timeline definitively proves the family had the geographic opportunity to observe the relationship, and it highlights highly suspicious financial reactions following the crime's discovery. But the ultimate facts regarding their complicity or innocence remain secured in a